The Winslow Homer segment was interesting. Actually, Chad Diamond, videographer at MPBN, shot that, and he did a nice job with it. But originally, what we wanted to do with that piece is Winslow Homer had a studio in Scarborough on Prout's Neck, right on the ocean. Many of his oil paintings that have now become very famous were painted in this location. And they've preserved the house, and it's barely a house. It started out as a cottage, or actually it started out as a horse barn for the bigger house. And then they moved it off the property and, you know, kind of gave Winslow his own little studio, and he expanded it a little bit, you know, put some bedrooms in and whatnot. So it became his living space slash studio. And this was in the late 1800s throughout the early 1900s. So it's been preserved as if he were still there. And it was real challenging shooting in there because it's a tiny, tiny place, a converted horse barn. And Chad brought in his jib, you know, a boom with a camera on it. And we wanted to do some real stylized shots of this cottage, his studio. And just getting the boom in there, we had to, you know, just grease it up and slide it in. There was no place to set it up, but Chad finally did get it put together, and we did some nice shots that you'll see in the piece where we kind of slowly move the camera up and down in the studio, so it worked out. Originally, though, the piece was going to be much more scaled down. We were going to have the curator of the Portland Museum of Art just kind of give us a tour, because the Portland Museum of Art now owns it. The heirs of Winslow Homer kind of deeded the cottage, the studio, to the Portland Museum of Art, and that just happened, gosh, within the last year, I think in January of 2006. And so, you know, flash forward to August of 2006, the Portland Museum of Art hadn't really decided what's going to happen with this, but we wanted to get a tour from the curator of, you know, this is where Homer painted, this is where he slept, this is a prop that he used. And so that's kind of how we approached it initially. But once we got in there, we discovered that there was a much bigger story that we could tell just about the place, because there was just so much history in there. I mean, there's places where Homer actually etched his name into a pane of glass, you know, in like 1900. And it's still there. And he wrote some other, you know, kind of obscure quotes and that sort of thing on the walls, and that's all still preserved. So once we got in there, we discovered, wow, this was going to be a 4-minute kind of walkthrough of his studio. But actually, we were able to tell a lot more of the history of Homer. So it was kind of a surprising piece.